broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Mackenzie, and I am the Community and Provider Education Coordinator for NAMI Maryland. I will be the moderator for our webinar today, along with my colleague, Maria Luchko. Everyone has their own song, a sequence of melodies and rhythms which make sense to us as individuals and which guide us through our lives. Unfortunately, the turmoil of 2020 has made many of us feel out of tune and has forced us to rethink our societal norms. The shifting landscape can be particularly difficult for our safety and for service providers to navigate as a result of the special professional demands they face. Today, we are hosting a special guest, Mark Junkerman, who will describe planning to thrive. This is an approach that recognizes the impact of culture on our perception in these fluid times and rises to meet the challenges we face through implementation of a three-part plan, which includes working with to bang, winning by design, and building a culture of personal and organizational wellness. In the end, the goal is to help you find the sound within yourself, which allows you to not just survive, but thrive.
Before we get started, we wanted to just note a few housekeeping points. To avoid any background noise, all participants will be muted for the duration of the webinar. We will be addressing questions at the end of the webinar. If you have any questions as the webinar continues, please enter them into the questions box, which is located on the right-hand side of your screen if you're viewing from a computer, or at the bottom of your screen if you're viewing from a phone. We will be receiving questions as they come in, and if something in particular is unclear or needs to be expanded upon, we will ask Mark to do so when the question is asked. If you have any comments or concerns during the webinar, please also enter these into the questions box. We will review and address any immediate needs that occur. A recording of this webinar will be emailed to each registrant tomorrow. The recording will also be available at our website at www.namimd.org for any individuals that were unable to register. 1 hour of CEUs are available for Maryland's police, corrections, and EMS professionals. Individuals pursuing CEUs must attend the whole webinar and submit the survey that will be presented to you at the end of today's webinar. A certificate of attendance will be sent to each registered participant tomorrow afternoon. And after today's webinar, you will be asked to complete a short survey on the aspects of the webinar that you felt were helpful, could be improved, and what you would like to see in future webinars. Each person that completes the survey will also be entered into a drawing to win a $25 Amazon gift card. This is only one webinar in a series of educational webinars that NAMI Maryland plans to host. We plan to host 5 more webinars in this series between now and April surrounding the topics of resilience, recovery, and creating a peer support system, cumulative trauma, and compassion cultivation. We ask that you please fill out the survey to let us know at NAMI Maryland how we can best support you during this time.
I'd like to now welcome our speaker for today's webinar, Mark Junkerman. Mark is an active law enforcement commander with over 27 years of experience in assignments such as patrol, special operations, SWAT, special investigations, and warrant apprehension. He has been involved in various peer and community behavioral health support roles since 2006, with a special focus on front-end wellness advocacy since 2016. This has led to the development of his Planning to Thrive program, which has been honored to deliver to various audiences across the country as an International Critical Incident Stress Foundation faculty member. Mark holds a BA in psychology from Lebanon Valley College and an MS in organizational management from Johns Hopkins University. He is also a United States Army veteran. Thank you, Mark, for joining us today.
Well, thank you, ladies, and thank you for that introduction. I feel fancy, and I appreciate that. So thanks, everybody, for joining us today. I know everybody's busy, so let's jump right into it and see if we can make some headway with this. This is just the normal screen you got to put up when you do this enough. Something you realize as you present enough times. I will be more than happy to share if you just ask. And I am not a clinician, and this is not designed to be therapy. But if somebody is in need, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who we can reach out to for that referral. So just so we're clear to get this started, like I said, yes, I am a law enforcement commander. I do have some background in this, but I like to tell people more importantly, I'm a Virgo. I like long walks in the rain. I think chocolate's a food group. Yes, I am wearing pants. Yes, they would be totally inappropriate if we were live. So I throw that out in kind of that manner because I want you to know that I'm nothing special. You know, I'm just a guy who's walked a certain path. I have some experiences that I think are interesting enough to share. And I really like to surround my people, or surround myself, I should say, with people who truly are experts. So one way is just a street sign. I'm going to throw out some suggestions. There are a million different ideas, theories, and ways to achieve wellness and resiliency as an individual and as an organization. So you need to take that journey yourself, and hopefully this will be a maybe a pointer, if nothing else. And everyone has a story. Again, you know, I'm a firm believer that the answers are in the room, and part of these webinars and these seminars, whether they're virtual or they are live, is to have the opportunity to kind of meet different people, see different ideas, and sometimes challenge your own. So that's where we are. Thanks for joining us again today. Let's get into some of the content here. We're going to talk about 4 themes today. Culture drives the bus, work left of bang, win by design, and create what I call a normative culture. Why planning to thrive? How did this start? Why did I get involved with this? What I've seen over my experience, 30 years of between the military and law enforcement, and a lot of public speaking, a lot of training, a lot of those sort of opportunities, is we often create programs, we often create policies, we often create sort of stopgap methodologies or items to address specific problems. But what we fail to do is create a culture. Again, these sort of ideas will not stick and become intrinsic and become part of you unless you decide to actually fold them into who you are. This is an opportunity to do more than just sit in a class or create a class. This is an opportunity to build something that is bigger than all of us. I've also found that a lot of times people will come, particularly people who are quote unquote experts, and they're going to tell you what you should do. I'm not a firm believer in that. In fact, I tend to buck that system when it happens, or buck that sort of approach. Again, I'm going to throw out some ideas. I want you to figure out what you need. And if some of the things in here are something you like, great. If there's stuff you totally disagree with, don't like, that's okay too. This is about, again, challenging yourself in order to figure out what's going to work best for you. You know, everybody has a recipe that they have inherited or they picked up someplace. But probably from the first time you cooked it to the time you are now cooking it, there's a lot of variation. And that's because you season it to your own taste. You know, the recipe kind of gives you the outline, but then you make it your own. Particularly now as we live in these historic times. Listen, our job as first responders, our job as public safety, public service providers is challenging enough during the best of times. You add COVID, you add unrest, you add a whole myriad of different challenges that have sort of all converged on us at once. And it sort of magnifies and amplifies those challenges that we face out there. And particularly for our first responders, you know, where control and your ability or priding yourself on being able to control a situation, de-escalate a situation, handle a situation, are challenged even more because this is the first time you're seeing some of this stuff. And that has a definite effect on our, you know, on our psyche. But what we often forget is, you know, your brain is just not standalone. This impacts your mind, body, and spirit. So what I hope as we move along today is that we get a couple ideas and throw out some things that might help you figure out a plan to better sustain, not just through COVID and these troubling times, but through your career and your life. So one of the first things that I want to throw out there is that culture is a catalyst. I'm a firm believer, that your culture consists of three components. You have your knowledge, which is your head. You have the tradition, which is your heart, and you have the hands, which is the experience. Those of you who can see the PowerPoint may see that there is an image up there, and it's depending on your perspective, you get a different perception. Some people may see a lady sitting at a vanity. Some people may see a skull. Some people may see both. And the point of this is to emphasize that fact that head, heart, and hands, that culture, that knowledge, tradition, and experience, a lot of that is based on the perspective you have or the perspective you were maybe given and the perception that creates. So that's an important factor as people, but particularly for public safety providers. So I'm going to put these up. When you enter your career, your profession, there's a tendency for you to have to put your best foot forward. That's common sense, right? You go to your interview, you go to your trainings, you go to whatever. You tell people that this is who I am, this is why I will impact your agency, these are the good things I bring. Here's the challenge with that, though. All of us have a little bit of salt, as I call it. So here's what kind of happens. We take these really good people, we select them, but we're not actually getting the whole package. We, as that employer, we as that community, we as a society, we only want the prime cuts. We only want the really good pieces or best vegetables, the ripest fruit for our stew that we're making here. There are no substitutions. Okay, we don't want substitutions. We're going to tell you how this is going to be as you come on board. And then we get seasoned to their liking. So I equate this to, you walk in, you have all of these ingredients on the table that are you, and they pick out what they want. So the question is, what do they do? What do you do with all those pieces that are left over? Maybe the pieces that, are a little salty. Maybe the pieces that aren't quite as ripe. Maybe the pieces that are a little gristly. That's still part of you. We can't simply separate those pieces. We have to do something with them. So a lot of times we kind of package them up and we throw them on our back in a backpack and we walk around with them. Because even though they don't want those, they're still part of us. We can't just leave them on the table. We can't just shove them in the disposal. And then we have this situation where we're already sort of re-socialized. We're already brought into a different culture. We have these pieces of us on our back. And a lot of times it doesn't actually work out just like we thought. We have a situation where we come in and we're told, don't let them see you sweat. As public safety professionals, as public service professionals, whether it's COVID, whether it's anything, you're expected to know the answer. You're expected to provide a certain level of safety, comfort, expertise, whatever your particular discipline is, whether it's law enforcement or public safety or behavioral health, community behavioral health, a clinician, whatever you do, you're expected to basically hit a home run every time. And one thing you don't let people do, you don't let people see you sweat. You need to be in control, because if you're out of control, there sometimes is nobody else, or things get worse. And we truly want to come in and try to make things better. The problem is that always doesn't work. Then, when you're out there long enough, you realize that your job is to kind of clean up other people's messes to a certain extent. That's what you quote unquote get paid for. But after a while, when you're mopping up aisle number 5, it can get old. So you transition. You start realizing that some of the things you thought, this wasn't exactly how I thought it was going to be. This isn't exactly what was in the brochure, let's say. So you start to feel some angst. You start to feel some stress. And you keep telling everybody, because you're not going to let anybody see you sweat, that you're fine. I'm fine. I'm absolutely fine. So fine actually means you're fed up, you're insecure, you're neurotic, and you're exhausted. because that's how you're walking around, trying to be fine, trying to stay in control. So after a while, sometimes things start to turn and you get to this sort of mentality where, serving the public's great, except for, well, the people, except for the public. And you'll feel that happening. So in my world, that may look like, I love all first responders. I think we're all out there doing our job, but I really like cops. Cops are really it because I'm a cop. And I really like, cops are kind of that's who I kind of want to be around, because the public doesn't understand me. My family doesn't understand me half the times. Some of the other first responders do, but cops really get me. So I like, except for feds. I don't like federal agents. I don't like federal agents. And troopers, not my cup of tea. I just want real cops, like real street cops who work with me, except for city cops because they steal. So the city cops, I don't want to be, I just want to be around my cops in my precinct. Actually, not my agency, just in patrol and just in my precinct, except shift 2. Shift 2, it's a nightmare. Shift 1's the best, except for Jimmy and Janie. Jimmy and Janie, I really can't stand. So at some point, you walk into a room and you realize that everybody but you is an idiot. When you get to that point where you're walking into a room and everybody in the room is found to be less than, that is a big red flag that you have totally isolated yourself, or you're in the process of isolating yourself. That isolation is going to be devastating. And it's something we do because we keep telling ourselves we're fine, but we just keep getting ground down. We keep getting ground down. And those things that are in our pack, they keep getting added because people want more and different things. And we're constantly trying to change that recipe. That stew that is us. So then we start doing things that maybe aren't the best. We're trying to start self-soothe, or we try to figure out ways to kind of ease this tension. And a lot of times they're dysfunctional, and that's where I bet you I can touch that shark. You're adrenaline junkies, you do risk-taking behavior. Sometimes it's about drugs, alcohol, sex, a whole myriad of things. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know if you've been in this profession. And the really scary, challenging point comes when you start questioning, what's the point of this? What's the point of doing this? And you look back after 5, 10, 20 years, and you're really not sure if you've made a difference. You're really not sure if you can do it one more day, and you've somehow lost who you were when you first came into this job. Now, you add COVID, again, you add unrest, you add some curveballs in there, that just accelerates this process. Or it may be the trigger, it may be the breaking point for you to realize that enough is enough. And when that happens, bad things can occur. Addiction, divorce, physical ailments, and in the worst case, suicide, somebody who takes their own life. The worst case, that is the worst case. And a lot of that is because along this path, you've been wearing this cape and being told you're Superman or Superwoman all the time. And there comes that instance where you try to take off and fly and you realize the cape's caught in the door. We can't function like that for 5, 10, 20 years. It's going to catch up with us. And I think seeing the situation we're presently in, again, I've said it a couple times now, this may accelerate some of that dysfunction or some of that sort of where we get to the edge of that cliff and we're looking into the abyss. But I throw this out. Right now, here today is a good day. And if we realize that and we recognize that, we're still in the fight. So I ask you to think about this in the course of your day. Think about it tomorrow. Think about it whenever. Who were you before you started this profession? Who are you now? And who would you like to be? Use that to help you reset. If you got to remember that shiny person who came in with all those hopes, all those dreams when you first started this, and you try to capture even a little bit of that, can't always go back. You can't go back. But if you can capture a little bit of that magic again, it's going to help you in the long run, and it may reset you. So that's the first thing, is to understand that this culture, it's not necessarily the job, it's not necessarily your family, it's not the public at large, it's your reaction and your response to all those things as they keep hitting you like buckets of water. So try to reset yourself. Understand that culture plays a huge part of this. The next thing is this idea of working left of bang. And you can see my really fancy definition up here. Heuristics. Some people are going to ask, what are heuristics? In a nutshell, heuristics are basically sort of gut reactions and responses from a gut reaction, immediate responses from a gut reaction. The hair on the back of my neck standing up. So something doesn't feel right. I don't know why that person's giving me, making me feel very uncomfortable. So it's that reaction where you decide to act on that right away instead of falling back to do some sort of analysis or to really look at the situation. So this left of bang theory, and there's a book, Patrick Van Horn and Jason Riley are the authors of this book. It's actually a Marine Corps, believe it or not, a Marine Corps combat manual. But it's not just about combat. It talks about this balance between the heuristics and analysis, where we have to come to some sort of reconciliation with ourselves to trust our gut, but not always have a knee-jerk reaction. And part of this concept allows us to do what we call work left of bang. We'll talk about the definition, what left of bang means as we go, and how this applies to our wellness, okay? Whoops, wrong way. So let me ask you what's on your radar. So I think of this as a radar screen. The green is out of range. So radar, radio detection and ranging, basically sends out a signal, it bounces off an object, that object sends a return, and it gives us an idea of, if not necessarily what the object is right away, at least how far it's out and that it's actually out there. So if things are out of range of your radar, that's the things that you don't even know you don't even know. There are the things that you have no clue about. Okay, it's not that big a deal. Once we get into this yellow, when things start coming in our radar and we get into this yellow area, they're now known to us, or at least partially known. We recognize that something's there, but we may not be able to recognize what it is. In military jargon, in aircraft jargon, that's called a bogey. We know that there's a plane out there. We know something's coming towards us. We can't identify it. We don't know what it is. So while that might not be a threat, what we know is we kind of have to make some determination soon before it's right on top of us. Unfortunately, a lot of times it's not until we get into that red zone where we decided it's either a bandit, which is something bad, or a buddy, something that's either not a problem or is actually a benefit. So what this radar helps you do is understand this left of bang concept, that it's important to try to project out and anticipate, identify, and deal with impactful things in your life well before they're on top of you, okay? So that led me to kind of create this little management model. There's a lot of stuff on here, but let me just kind of explain it as we talked about. So we're trying to balance analysis versus going by our gut and what's called an immediate response. We want to do that before this left of bang. Left of bang is a term which talks about being proactive, inoculation. What are we doing before the crisis happens? What are we doing before the incident happens? Where in this case, it's this big red splash that you can see on the screen. So our goal is to use our radar to try to figure out what we need to do before that thing hits. Because once it hits, now we're totally reactionary. Now we're trying to figure it out as we go along, and that's always not the best course of action. Okay. In order to do that, we want to do three things using this, what I call this I cubed. It's going back to that radar. When we see something pop up on our radar screen, we want to try to identify it. We want to intervene, and then we want to decide, do we inoculate ourselves against that, or do we integrate it? Is it something that we don't want to introduce into our lives, our system, or is it something we want to bring in? The anticipate, investigate, mitigate, and monitor is actually part of the process to help you identify and intervene. So that blue arrow on the bottom, let's think of that as our knowledge. The green arrow in the middle is that tradition. So we have this knowledge, but the tradition, the normative culture, the ability to actually apply that knowledge, those policies, those trainings, those things that we need to do for ourselves that we're very aware of, those things are extremely important. we can't, if we do not apply the knowledge, then the knowledge is almost worthless. So that second green arrow is that tradition is our heart. And hopefully what that does is between our knowledge and our tradition, the culture we create, that yes, we are going to deal with these things ahead of time. We are going to identify problems before they happen. We are going to take some intervention, and then we are going to try to inoculate and integrate, decide what we're going to do with that. That's going to create a culture where once we start actually using that, our hands, the experience, we're going to see as we evaluate that we are better off by being left of bang as opposed to waiting for bad things to happen and then be reactionary. I know this may be a little bit of a heavy concept. When we do our full day presentations and trainings, or our 2-day presentations and trainings, we actually do some exercise that makes this a little bit clearer. But the left of bang concept is just basically this. Remember that you want to be ahead of the game and not behind the power curve. Because there's bandits. Our friend, Mr. Nassim Taleb talks about what we call black swans. Black swans are those things that we never even anticipated would pop up on our radar, but then suddenly either challenge, they create either a threat or an opportunity. Working left of bang might not help you identify those black swans right away, but if they may come up on your radar quicker, which will give you the ability to react. What we're trying to do is buy ourselves time and be able to not have a knee-jerk reaction unless we absolutely need it. The second thing are the gray rhinos. The gray rhinos are those things that we can see coming from a mile away, and it's bearing down on us, and we need to do something about that. And they're the more obvious sort of crises. Some of the other bandits that we sometimes engage in, or we sometimes let slip through the cracks, are good intentions. Here's what I mean by that. You know, it's hard to tell somebody that you need to change your behavior. We are seeing things that are indicating that you are in crisis, or that you may be in crisis. We are seeing things that are dysfunctional. We are seeing things that are impacting your life, your job. There's a disorder. The way you live, love, work. It's creating situations where you're doing things you don't want to do, or not doing things you do want to do. Whether that's you looking at yourself or you looking at an individual. Sometimes we don't want to hurt people's feelings, so we just let that slide. And then that bandit just becomes bigger and bigger on our radar, and we react before it's too late. The other situation is just willful ignorance, and that is where we know this stuff's coming down, but for whatever reason, we make a choice not to deal with it. Good intentions are one thing. Willful ignorance is a whole different animal. And you see that a lot of times at the organizational level rather than just at the personal level. So I'm going to ask you, as you do this assessment, left of bang, here's a quick left of bang assessment and how this applies to you as an individual and your individual health and welfare, and where we're going with this. What have you eaten? How much have you slept? How much caffeine have you ingested? Are you exercising your mind, body, or spirit? With whom have you interacted outside of your box? You know, outside of the people at work or the people in your house? Have you, how often are you self-actualizing versus how often are you self-medicating? And here's the sort of the balance when we talk about that equilibrium. And again, left to bang. Remember that you can self-medicate with things that are in small doses good. A perfect example is exercise. You know, if you're running 10 miles a day, not because you're enjoying running because it's healthy, but because you're trying to run from quote unquote something in the mirror, then you're not actually self-actualizing, you're self-medicating. And sometimes we lose that. We lose sight of that. So the second thing, after we understand culture drives the bus, and then we talk about this left of bang concept, the next idea is to win by design. Hope is not an action plan. You know, playing the lottery is not the best decision if for your retirement portfolio. You know, if you're depending on a scratch off to help get you to retirement, you might want to rethink that. That's not the best plan. When we talk about winning by design, we talk about a 3-phase sort of decision that you should do. I recommend you do. I try to do on a daily basis. First of all, is you got to find a purpose. There's got to be a reason you're getting out of bed. Second, you take ownership for yourself. Salt and all, warts and all, regardless of what you're carrying in that backpack. Sometimes we don't like what we see in the mirror, but we have to still look at it. The biggest challenge, the biggest trouble comes when we stop looking in the mirror because we are afraid or we don't like what we see. Once you take care of that me, now it's time to be accountable to and for your peers. So you take care of the me, then you can start taking care of the we. In order to do this, though, you have to make a commitment. And that's my bacon and eggs friends here, okay? If you have a bacon and eggs breakfast, the chicken is involved. That pig is committed. You have to be the bacon when it comes to your own wellness, your own resiliency. You have to take ownership for yourself. A technique we talk about to help you do that is something we've come up with is called Take 5. First thing is take a breath. Remember, breathing is an essential thing to life. We know that, but we forget sometimes. One of the things that happens when we become overly stressed out is that vagal sort of response that we get, that physiological response from fight or flight, will often stop us from breathing, right? You get in that freeze mode. So one of the things we want to make sure you do is take a breath, take a cleansing breath, okay, figuratively and literally. And remember, it's not just the oxygen that's coming in when you inhale that's important. It's off-gassing, getting all that bad air out of you in that exhale. Next, take a step back. Take a step back, reassess the situation. Remember we talked about that radar, that left of bang? We're looking for some distance to buy us time, okay? We want to buy some time, we want to buy some distance, we want to buy the ability to make good decisions and not reactionary decisions, unless it's absolutely necessary. Then take a look at what you have. Not what you think you have, not what you'd like to have, not what you think you deserve, what you actually have on hand. Once you do that, you have the ability now to take some control of that situation. What I have found personally, one of the hardest things about taking control of a situation is learning and understanding that in order to do that, you actually need to give up some control in order to take control. There's certain things maybe in that part of the radar that are way left of bang that, you know, it's not a priority now. It's not that you don't have to recognize it or deal with it at some point, but if I can't control it, particularly if I can't control it right now, then let me focus on the things I can control and be efficient and effective and include them in my plan. Once you have that plan, now you can take charge. And I equate this to cleaning a dirty car. Everybody has a different way that they wash their car. Some people take it to a car wash. Some people use different soaps. Some people use a chamois. It's all different things, okay? What I do know, though, is regardless of how you plan to wash your car, I very rarely see somebody who only washes half of their car and then is done, okay? You just can't do it. You can't leave half a dirty car. So once you start this, take your time, go through the process, take little bites, do it in a way that is consistent and organized until the whole car is clean. And before you know it, you'll be done. In order to do that, we want to create this framework, okay? And there is a book by Miguel Ruiz, Dr. Don Miguel Ruiz, called The Four Agreements that I really enjoy. And here's what this talks about. In this process of this Take 5, and as I try to start assessing things and figuring out what's going on, taking control and looking at what I have, a couple of things you might want to avoid. Stop making the victim noises. Okay, we know what's broken, what's working. What can we build on? Build on the positive and focus on that, as opposed to getting wallowed, getting sort of mired, I should say, in the negative. Stop the penance payments. Okay, if you've already paid for a sin, stop perseverating if you can. I know that sometimes that's easier said than done, but stop paying for the same sin over and over and over again. Human beings are the only critters on this planet that have this thing called guilt. Yeah, a dog knows when it's in trouble, but that's not a guilt feeling. That's a, hey, I don't want to, I want pleasure versus pain. That's almost a very mammalian reaction. As humans, we have this construct called guilt, and we keep beating ourselves up with it. The other thing is thinking you have that big S on your chest, and we talked about that. None of us are Superman or Superwoman or super person in general. We are what we are. We are not super people. We are just people who sometimes have to do super things because of the nature of our jobs. Start making peace with the bells, okay? You can't unring a bell. If you've done something, create a situation, you're not going to unring that bell. That bell has been rung, you can't take that away. But what you can do is decide for yourself if that bell is going to kind of like drive you crazy, like old Quasimodo in the Hunchback of Notre Dame with the bells ringing in his head all the time, or if that bell turns into something else, like a church bell, like the bell at the courthouse. You learn something from it. It goes off, you hear it, it's a gentle thing in the back, and it reminds you that it's lunchtime, that you need to be someplace at a certain time of day. You use it for something good, as opposed to letting it make you, cause you angst, let's say. Traveling light. What I've found is, as we move through life, is there's a lot of things that I thought I needed, but a lot of that was what I wanted. What I need is what I need. You'll be surprised at what you can actually travel with and focus on in your life. You can really pare down and figure out what's important. And then the other thing is be thankful for today. And there's what's that old saying, yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. And that is something I think we should truly embrace, and I think we all need to do more of. Today, so far for me, has been a pretty good day. So I am thankful for that, and I'm going to try to do things to keep on that same path. Now, if you need a particular structure, there's a bunch of them out there. Graham Fine and Whitmore, Sir Arthur Whitmore, they came up with this model called GROW, which is an application. So now that we have decided that we want to have a plan, and we're figuring out what to look at, and we're not going to pay our penance, we need an actual structure. This is one tool you can use, and what GROW stands for is pick your goal, look at the reality of what you're in, think of your options, and then choose a way forward. And that's pretty cut and dry and simple. Some people use the old Peter Drucker, SMART. You want to make sure your plan is specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So what we're trying to do here is, in a nutshell, we've talked about culture. We're talking about left of bang. We want to be proactive, and now we want to identify a plan. We want to have an actual sort of blueprint how to use the tools in our box, as opposed to just kind of winging it as we go along. Because what we know is, if you have a plan, you have a better chance to succeed. Let's be honest, if you're in a casino, you don't want to be the guy or the girl on this side of the table. You want to be on the house's side of the table, because in the end, the odds are in their favor. Doesn't mean they're always going to win, but you're playing the odds. What this approach does, it gives us an idea, a way to look at our own wellness, our own personal sort of baggage, where we want to be, what we want to do, and apply some management techniques to actually help us maybe get there, okay? And what this does is, what I found, if you do need extra help, whether it's a consultant, a counselor, whatever, you actually have an idea sort of where and when you need that. You know, it's not like you take the car to the mechanic and go fix it. You say, I've done this, this, and this, and this, and I'm hearing a rattle right here. And that helps narrow down when and what you need to bring in to actually succeed in your goal and your path. So I like to say, there's people out there who have what I call an alligator mouth and a hummingbird butt, okay? We do a lot of this, but we don't do a lot of backing it up. So I'm gonna challenge myself and everybody, because every time I do this, it's a challenge to myself again. Sometime today, I would like you to answer those questions that we saw about, you know, who were you when you started this profession? What do you like now? And who do you want to be? I want you to take a left of bang assessment to actually look at how are you taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually by that checklist. Are you getting enough water? Are you getting enough sleep? Are you actually engaging the world at large, not just as a professional, but as a person, as a human being? And then once you kind of figure out where you are on the spectrum and maybe what you want to do, put together a plan. Just pick one mind thing you'd like to do, one body thing, and one spirit thing. One of the best investments I ever made was a dollar store dry erase that literally cost $1 that I put up on the refrigerator. So every time I open that refrigerator, which if you saw me in person, you're probably seeing me now, you'll realize it. And that's probably pretty often I go in the refrigerator. There's some things that I say, you know what, did you do this today? Did you think about this today? You made a promise to yourself. Don't cheat yourself. It's one thing to, it's bad enough if you're cheating other people. Don't cheat yourself. That's a game you're always going to lose. Once we do that and we do the, okay, I'm kind of know where I need to be, the we, now we want to go from the me to the we. And here's how this works. Create a buoy, okay? We need to be accountable to and for each other. We need to be accountable to and for our peers. We need to be a buoy. Here's this buoy concept of sort of peer support or supporting each other. If somebody falls off a boat, they can swim to the buoy and they can hang on. And that buoy says, I am not going to let you drown as long as you hang on. But you only have two choices. First choice, catch your breath, get a plan. Think about it, figure out a plan, just like we talked about, swim on your own. What we know is that with a little bit of information, a little bit of support, a little bit of humanity, the vast majority, 80 to 85% of the people, even more, are going to be able to swim on their own. If you can't, that's okay too. It's okay not to be okay. I have a bell, I have a light, shake me, a boat will come, we'll take it, we'll get you what you need, then we'll get you back to shore. Catch your breath, swim on your own, or get on the boat. What you can't do is hang on that buoy. And too often in public safety and just people in general, we tend to hang on that buoy because we can't swim on our own. But for a lot of reasons, pride, stigma, financial, a million different things, we won't get on that boat. And those people are going to drown. Unfortunately, those people will drown. Not because it's the buoy I want them to drown, but because I can't prevent them from drowning. See, if you're hanging onto that buoy, you have to realize that as the buoy, I have no arms. I cannot hold you up. You have to help me help you. And until you're ready to do that, this is going to be a struggle. There is a finite window where there's nothing else I can do. You have to take responsibility for yourself. So, work to create a normative culture of healthy people. One of the things that I like to emphasize to my troops is never forget, because I did at some point, that you're a person wearing a badge and not a badge wearing a person. Okay, you were a person before we gave you a badge, a patch, a title, a degree, whatever. Don't ever forget that someday you're going to be that. You're going to have an opportunity to be a person again. Find the tools which work for you. And we talked about this. There is no one size fits all. This is a recipe that you can tweak as you go. And from my experience, it's better to have a couple really good tools in the box or really good sort of approaches to things as opposed to trying to deal with everything at once. And that goes back to that sort of left the bank concept. If you have a pretty good plan overall, when a black swan or a gray rhino pops up, you may not have exactly the tools you need, but you have time to react and either adapt or get the tools that you need to deal with those. And in the end, what we want to see is we want to see a culture, not a program. And this is the last point of our little journey here together. Again, peer support is designed to help you help yourself. Okay, I can only carry you so much. You need to be part of the solution to your own challenges. What we hope the organization does is recognize that. Remember to be people-centric and not just mission-centric, because a good manager, a good leader is going to know the healthier my people are, the better I'm going to be able to complete my mission more effectively and more efficiently. It just goes hand in glove. Okay, so the goal for when I tell people who are creating these wellness plans or these resiliency plans, when I go in and we talk about it and we help put things together, I remind them that basically you are creating a safety net for a trapeze artist. You have individuals in your organization who are highly trained, highly motivated, specially selected to do a very challenging job. And they have to go out there every day, every night, and it's a zero-fail environment. Okay, what gives them the confidence, what helps keep them healthy and in the fight, as I like to say, is knowing that there's a safety net underneath them. So if they fall and miss the trapeze, something's going to catch them. But no net is made of just one strand of rope. Okay, it's not just about mental health. It's about mental health, financial awareness, nutrition, fitness, occupational safety, family support. It's this integrated sort of web that will allow somebody, no matter where they fall on that net, to be safely sort of cushioned. And in a perfect world, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for a culture that's going to catch everybody. Okay, because it's multi-componented, because it's multi-dimensional, because it's flexible, and it's integrated as part of the norms. It's what we do every day. Raising kids, I never had a policy or a sign that says you will brush your teeth every day. But everybody managed to do that. Why? Because around here, we brush our teeth. It's just something we do. The best resiliency cultures are going to have the best resiliency. Here's just a little overlay, and this is what I have come to find in myself, and one of the things I really like to challenge people to do: be a voice instead of just an echo. Okay. If you don't like anything I've said today, that's okay. If you don't like my haircut, I get it. It's okay. But you have to be your own voice, and you are your best advocate. Don't sort of don't hand your wellness and resiliency and well-being over to something else. Don't sort of subcontract your own wellness. You need to be part of this. Be your own voice and not just an echo. And I'm going to tell you why. I am not the fairest one of all. So all my fancy credentials and everything that you heard in the beginning. I was a really good soldier and I was a really good cop, but the reality is I was kind of a lousy person at times. I was a lousy husband and it cost me a marriage. Sometimes I've been a lousy father, a friend, son, because I forgot that I was more than just a badge. I let those things that I experienced define who I was, as opposed to helping shape what I want to be and who I want to be. And it didn't happen overnight. It was very insidious. And I woke up one day and I had to make some hard decisions. I was down a hole and I looked up and there were people around the hole, people I cared about, people who cared about me. Not a lot, because I had alienated most of those people. And I said, hey, I'm in a hole. And they looked down at me and they went, yeah, we know. The only person who didn't know you were in a hole was you. So what do you want to do about it? And one of the first things I learned I had to do about it was admit that like 46.5% of all the people in the US, according to the last statistic I saw from the World Health Organization, I am also a mental health consumer. I needed that CBT. I needed that EMDR. I needed to talk to somebody. I couldn't just white knuckle this and muscle through. I had to take ownership for myself. I had to have a plan. I had to do all those things I just talked about. But when I did the math, I realized that there's a couple things here that are well beyond the scope of what I can do for myself. And I finally broke down. That's not the correct term. I finally put it down. I put that backpack and the stuff I was carrying, all those pieces, parts. I embraced who I was. I looked myself in the mirror and realized I don't like everything I see, but it's okay. I have a choice and I can make it. So this little celebration here is me in my Philadelphia Eagles jersey, where I grew up, rubbing all along the Dallas Star. And that was the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl. Dallas had won multiple Super Bowls, but you know what? In the end, a little perseverance and a little self-disclosure and a little self-love goes a long way. You too can win the Super Bowl, and then you can flaunt it like you should. So how we do today? These are the 4 areas. Again, when we do this in a sort of an all-day program or a 2-day program, we have some more things that we talk about, and we actually drill down and actually let people walk out with some of these tools and practice them. But this is kind of where we are and what we did. This is me. I think we've gone about 45, 50 minutes so far, and I want to make sure that there's enough time for some Q&A if there's a choice. So I want to say that I am actually honored to be here. I've been very fortunate to work with NAMI as part of community health and first responder health, and especially with MIMS and the ICISF and a lot of people. It boggles my mind to this day that a sort of a street kid from Philly could get to the point where he had the privilege and opportunity to lead and work with heroes on a daily basis. And if there's one thing that I've learned from my own experience, if there's one word that I could sum everything up, it's actually 2: humility and thankfulness. I'm just glad to be here, and I hope whether you like what I said or not, it at least makes you think, it challenges you, because I'm going to be a voice and not just an echo. Thank you, ladies. I'm going to turn it over to you see if there's any Q&A.
Thank you, Mark. That was great. Thanks for providing this critical information during this great time of need. Right now, we're going to open up the webinar for any questions that the attendees might have. Every participant will stay muted to avoid background noise, but you can type your question in the questions box. It's going to be on the right-hand side of your screen if you're viewing from a computer, or at the bottom of the screen if you're viewing from a phone. If you have any questions that you'd like to ask or have a comment about the webinar, please enter these questions into the box now. And if we do not have time to answer each question today, we will provide our contact information at the end of the webinar for anyone who may wish to reach us with any questions or comments. So I'm going to look through the questions right now. And one of the first questions that I see was asked in regards to the importance of first responders, how important it is and how first responders can learn to build resilience and manage stress early in their career, so when they're just starting out.
So, and that's a great question. So if the question is, how do we do that? What do we need to foster? I'm going to tell you, it comes down to a single word. It comes down to actually, again, single word, two words: how we hire and how we train. In my mind, the first thing we need to do is realize that we are accepting people into our professions and not some sort of fantasy individual who is the perfect clinician, cop, firefighter, medic, whatever. We have to accept that salt. That's the first thing. The second is we have to train our young men and women to understand not only what their job is, but how important it is for them to embrace who they are, because that's why they got here in the first place, and to not lose those wonderful things that we're hiring them for, that have made us choose them. So in short, we have to learn how to hire better and screen, and we have to learn how to train. We got to put the emphasis on the front end. We got to pay now, or we're going to pay later.
Okay. Another question, I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with as in terms of just starting out as in EMS or law enforcement. And the question was about, how do you approach somebody that is in the department that is very prideful or seasoned, and they are very stubborn and hard to work with, and you're just starting out and trying to interact with them?
Yeah, and that's a challenge, and that's going to be a situation dictates. But here's what I know and what has worked for me, a technique. And if we look at this, the de-escalation, if that person is salty, usually there's a reason. There's something that is a reason that they're that way, let's say. My approach is always, again, to come with a sense of humility. And I will approach somebody in that, and I will say, listen, the reason I keep coming to you is because you have things that you can teach me, because I want to learn. And I know that everything in the book is not going to be what we see out there in the real world on the street. I have the knowledge. I'm learning the tradition. What I need is your experience. And I am asking you to be my mentor, to help me learn so I can do this job the right way and learn that right out of the gate. To me, that approach will often sort of melt that individual's, sort of ice wall there. And frankly, if it doesn't, you have to, again, you have made the overture. If that's the case, then maybe that person is not ready to be able to mentor you yet or give you that information. That might not be necessarily something because of you, that might be something they're carrying around. So if you recognize that and maybe just sort of give some space and time and reapproach it later, that might be an approach to you as a new individual sort of breaking into the organization. The old guys love to talk, as you can see, and we love to teach, even if we're a little salty and bristly on the outside.
That's great. Okay. So another question would be, what do you think like the warning signs are for law enforcement and EMS to see that they're struggling with something mentally, or just how you would approach an individual in the department that you are kind of worried about, or just notice that something's off?
Yeah, so here, and I can tell you from my own experience, the last place I started showing, let's say, symptomology was on the job, okay? Because what you tend to do is at least I can speak for me. I sort of used that as like my citadel. It was my my beau geste. It was my fort in the desert where, you know what, I'm going to hold this job and I'm going to hold my job stuff together, at all costs here. what I have seen, the biggest indicators to me are when you have somebody who is a high performer, who is passionate, who looks the part, their equipment's clean, their uniform, the way that their reports are done correctly. When you start seeing signs, symptoms that they're having issues on the job, a lot of times it could be a training issue. It could be that's always the case, particularly if it's something new. But to me, when you start seeing a good performer or somebody start to, let's say, deteriorate, that's when the red flag goes up for me. Because again, from my experience, public safety in general, you will put on that front at work to the best of your ability until you simply can't. When I see that disheveled uniform person who is always freshly pressed, when I see poor decision making, when I start getting complaints, that flags me to say there is something going on that this person can no longer keep up that front.
Okay. Another question that came in is, how do you get both leadership and employers and employees to participate together in peer support meetings without the us versus them mentality?
You feed them as much coffee as you can, then you lock them in a room without a bathroom until they decide to play nice together. It's again, that's going to be a which came first, the chicken or the egg. Let me circle back to my original question, one of that first question, because I think it all ties in. Here's what I think. I think in order to create a culture, you have to start that someplace. To me, the best way to start a culture is to at least get everybody to buy in that this needs to be something that our new people start to embrace, or that we have to teach our new people in order for sustainment, okay? In order for the agency to go on. Here's why. If I can get a couple really good instructors, if I can get one good supervisor who has a couple good instructors who can then sort of train the field training people and those recruits, cadets, entrance level, rookies, whatever you want to call them. It's not going to be an overnight thing, but eventually that good supervisor is going to become a commander, and those good instructors are going to become supervisors, and those new recruits are going to become the instructors and the field trainers, and they're going to pass it down. And at some point, you're going to change the culture because the norms will be different. So to me, if you can just get enough buy-in to start looking at this as we need to grow our own and we need to create a plan for sustainment, that will then permeate the agency. That's a very simplistic answer to a very complex question, but that's an approach that I might suggest if it at least helps a little bit.
Okay. I think we have time for one more question. I don't know, Mackenzie, one more question, or are we all done with questions?
Sorry, I found it hard to unmute myself. I think we have one more time to, one more question.
Okay. So the last question that popped in was, describe left of bang culture in one sentence, if you can do that.
Inoculate yourselves in the good times so you can be ready for the bad times.
I think we also had one other question that I saw come through that was a really good one. One person said that they had trouble advocating for themselves and were looking for different resources that you may be able to suggest on how to do so.
Yeah, and a lot of that is going to come down to what specific, I guess, first of all, what specific resources are they looking for? I mean, what are they trying to advocate for? So that's a great question. That might be something that we kind of circle back to, depending on what that individual might need. But what I can tell you is, when you start advocating for yourself, one of the things that I suggest you do, and what I like to do, is figure out something you like to do, something you enjoy. And if you're not sure, go dabble in some things. And I don't mean work things. I mean, pick up an instrument, take kickboxing, learn to, cook a souffle. Do something that gives you enjoyment, because what I find is people who start enjoying themselves, enjoying things around them and enjoying the day in general, will start to advocate more. They will become more confident. They will become more well-rounded, and they will be able to articulate what they need when they need it to people. Again, I know that's sort of a roundabout response, but a lot of that's going to depend on what we, are we talking about behavioral health? Are we talking about job coaching? We need to drill that down. But as a rule, I think if you make a commitment to yourself to do something good for you once a day, something nice for you, even if it's take a walk, read a book, do something, build something. I think in the long run, that goes a lot to enhancing your self-image. It goes a lot to building your self-confidence, and it will help you be a little more comfortable with that person in the mirror. It helps you sort of break down a lot of those stigmas from the inside, even if the world around you isn't ready to knock down that part of the wall on their side.
I know a lot of people have said that this was a wonderful presentation, that there simply wasn't enough time, and they're interested in learning more. So I know that this is only one in a series of webinars that we plan to host. So we do plan to host 5 more webinars, but they were also interested in the full day training that you had mentioned. Would you be able to talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. There's some information up on the screen right now. I do work with the International Critical Incident Stress Foundation. I know that if you go on their website, there's a whole host of training, and not just by me, but there's all sorts of training out there for people. You can get on there. You can look. I believe we're going to look in February. We're going to be doing a version of this in an 8-hour virtual format. But if you have questions, you know what? My phone number's up there. My personal email's up there. Hit me up. I'll be more than willing to explain what else is out there and what you can do. Listen, I love doing this stuff because it's a passion of mine and it makes me feel good when I do it. Yes, it's all about me. I get that. A little narcissistic, but it makes me feel good. But there's a lot of really cool stuff out there that makes me look like chopped liver, let's say. So I would be more than happy to share all sorts of resources, people, things we do out there that can help you maybe get a plan and make you feel a little better about yourself.
Perfect. So I know we are 1 minute over, but I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar for today. So thank you everyone for joining us. This webinar has been recorded and it will be emailed to all registrants tomorrow. And the webinar will also be uploaded to our website at www.namimd.org for anyone who wasn't able to join us today. We hope that this webinar has been helpful for you, and it seems from the comments that it definitely was. At the end of the webinar today, you will be asked to complete a short survey on the aspects of this webinar that you felt were helpful, could be improved, and what you would like to see in future webinars. 1 hour of CEUs are available for Maryland Police, Corrections, and EMS professionals. And individuals pursuing these CEUs must complete the survey at the end of the webinar. Each person that also completes the survey will be entered to win a drawing for a $25 Amazon gift card. And this is only one webinar in our series, as mentioned. So we would greatly appreciate it if you could let us know how we can best support you during this time. Our next webinar is entitled Resiliency and Mental Wellness for First Responders, and it will take place on January 11th from 12 to 1 p.m. Maria will post the registration information in the chat now for anyone who may wish to join us. We wish you all a safe and healthy rest of your week, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. We can be reached at 410-884-8691, or Mark's information is on the screen now for you. We hope everyone has a great day, and thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Okay.